Well, there's an awful lot of running going on in the gospel today. You've got Mary of Magdala running to tell the apostles about the empty tomb. You've got Peter and John running back to the tomb to check out what the heck's going on. Another option that could be read for this gospel reading this evening is the Walk to Emmaus reading, where you've got the two disciples who meet Jesus on the road. And whenever they find out that they had been walking in Jesus' company, they run back to Jerusalem to go tell the disciples and the apostles. There's all this running about, this chaotic flitting to and fro because something really crazy has just happened. Now, if you know much about running in ancient culture, it's not something that most people did. It's not something you did for fun anyway. Think to the story of the prodigal son, where you've got the father who's waiting there for his son to come home, and when he sees him afar away off, he goes and runs to his son to embrace him and kiss him. That's not nobleman behavior. That's what slaves and servants do. You make the slave or servant go run to do whatever the important task is, but you as a nobleman would never do such a thing. That's not dignified behavior. And so the prodigal son should have been the one running back to the father and putting homage and all these things, but that's not what the father did for the son. The disciples are running around crazy, undignified, because what happened on Easter Day was crazy. There's nothing that should have tipped them off other than the fact that Jesus kept predicting over and over again, by the way, I'm going to rise from the dead. But there's nothing in them that it made sense that Jesus would rise. And so to see the tomb empty was just shocking. They watched him die. They remembered very well just a couple of days ago how many of them had ran whenever Jesus was being taken and arrested and crucified. Peter very much remembered his denial of Christ. And now, for some reason, his body is gone. And they're running around trying to figure out what's going on. We live in a bit of a disadvantage as a modern society, but don't worry, we're correcting that in this moment right now. Because as modern people, we've heard the gospel message that Jesus died on the cross, but he rose again from the dead, and so everything's great. But put yourself into this scene, and imagine how impossible this whole idea is, that somebody should rise from the dead. We're a little bit desensitized with the Christian story because we're too focused on cute bunnies and chocolate-covered eggs, although those are delightful things. But there's something bigger happening here. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. These same disciples and apostles who denied Christ, who ran away, because of this singular event of the resurrection, will then go forth and proclaim to the nations that Jesus is risen, and they will even go to their deaths proclaiming this truth, because it's that important. The whole of history is surrounded by the event of Christ coming in the flesh and dying. Just think of the way we do calendars now. Year zero is when Jesus is born. Everything before that was leading up to him. Everything after that is the fulfillment of his death and resurrection. No other person and no other event in history has rewritten how we look at our calendars like that. Because this has changed everything. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. That means that everything about my life has to reflect this great mystery.